beloved friends, we gather here in this time of man's great innocence.
Innocence? Innocence? No?
Hey folks, it's Tabby from Modern Life Podcast. I've got Stacy here with me today.
Hi.
You can find us at modernlifepodcast.com and also at Instagram and Twitter at modernlifepod. Today we're going to be talking about the new Emma that came out in 2020 by Autumn de Wilde. But before we get into that, Stacy, what's your modern thought today?
My modern thought is pretty simple, actually. It's just about the new mask trend that's picking up and like how it's now becoming a new accessory. Like if you go onto stores, websites, like online websites, they actually have like all these different types of masks and how they predicted that it's now going to be like the number one accessory in 2021, which I thought was interesting because it's like something that's so surgical, like in appearance, and it covers your face. I don't know. It's just an interesting choice, I guess you could say.
People are putting like rhinestones on it.
Oh yeah, crazy stuff. Like there's some lady in Iceland that's like knitting them and like doing all kinds of like crazy like like alien like masks and yeah. But
do you think that's gonna last after the pandemic is over?
I think that the pandemic, from what I've read, is going to be here for at least another year to two, until we build up enough immunities to fight against it. So I think it's going to be a solid trend. I think it's here to stay for at least a year. I don't know if it'll stay after that.
And then you'll be like uncool if you don't have...
That's kind of the design that they're trying to go into, and I think it's their way of like encouraging like the youth to like actually wear them and things like that. So
nice. Yeah. Mine I already talked to Stacey about, but it's Never Have I Ever, the new show on Netflix. It just recently came out. It's like your typical high school show. It kind of mixes Easy A, the Duff, and then Anne Gilbert from Anne of Green Gables. I like that because I don't think you do need to reinvent the wheel every time you make a new show. But I think what kind of elevates it or makes it more interesting is actually the diversity, because the main family is Indian, and you have a lot of influences on the story just because they're Indian, and just a specific type of humor too. There's one scene where one of the Indian family members says to the other one, "Oh, do you want to watch this new Bollywood movie? It's only 7 hours long." And like, just the humor is like really funny, and I think it's just something light and easy to watch right now. The episodes are only like 20 minutes long, and there's only 10 of them. So if you need something uplifting, Never Have I Ever on Netflix.
I have yet to watch it, but I've been encouraged to.
So let's get into the main topic. Emma first came out in 1815 by Jane Austen. It follows kind of a rich, beautiful young girl within her community, within her parish, and kind of the adventures that happen to her within that very confined space. Emma believes herself to be kind of like a matchmaker, and as the story goes on, we find out that her skills in that might not be as good as she believes them to be. What's your first item on the list over there, Stacy?
Oh, mine is just more notes on the movie and things that I noticed that I don't know whether they worked or not. I actually ended up going back and reading the book because I was just curious. Like, the opening scene to the movie, I found jarring. It brought an opinion of, like, not liking the movie. I had an overall feeling I wasn't going to like the movie in the end, which actually ended up changing because I did end up liking the movie in the end. But I think the original portrayal of Emma in this movie, like, kind of bothered me at first. I always thought of her as haughty and, like, thought of herself very highly and conceited, but never in a point where it's dislikable. And in the opening scene, I found her very dislikable, which I find, after I read several reviews, that I think that was and listened to a couple of the director's opinions on this, that she did that on purpose. And I still don't know if it works for me, but I definitely think that the learning curve made me like her a lot more. And I definitely feel like the portrayal of Mr. Knightley made me like her more. So like his role and his take on it it worked so well between the two of them that in the end I ended up liking the Emma character, but it still I don't know.
Yeah, this is definitely one that leans more towards her being a little more unlikable. I think Clueless is kind of like that too, where she's just a little insufferable, and people are so split with Emma where they either really don't like her or it's their favorite book.
Yeah.
And I think it's also tough to show every opinion that she has about all the people around her, which are sometimes so obnoxious. I think it's tough to show that in a movie without doing like a voiceover or. But then I compare it to something maybe like the Gwyneth Paltrow version, where she is really like sweet and demure, and she makes a lot of mistakes, but you really root for her. And I think those are two very different approaches, and they both work for me.
Yeah.
I
I think that there's a balance in the middle that no one's really found yet, because I went back and I looked at some of I loved the version with Gwyneth Paltrow. That version I loved it from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
But going back and looking at rereading the book and then looking at some of the scenes, I was like, okay, she's a little too sweet
Right.
for
Yeah.
the actual book. And then this one, to
Mhm.
me, she just went a little over the top. There was the haughtiness that was like unlikable to me. And I get that that's part of her character, but at the same time, it didn't fully work for me.
That's fair. Yeah.
I feel like there was a balance between the two that needs to occur. Actually, I don't like Clueless. She's very insufferable, but there's always a likability to her. Like, she's annoying, and to me, that character actually worked the balance a little bit better than others, because she's still mean, but it's never to the point where you're like, maybe it's because it's done in modern day at the time. And so I saw more, maybe I could buy into it more because it's of the script and like how it's set.
Mhm.
But it just, I don't know.
So something I actually really liked that didn't change throughout the movie is in that very first scene how they treat their servants. And the depiction of class in the movie was one of my favorite things. There's no arc. They wouldn't have seen their servants as people.
Yeah.
And I love that the director made that very clear. I mean, Emma's having trouble just seeing like the rich merchant, what's his name, Mr. Cole,
Yeah.
as like a human being. Like, they're not going to be nice to their servants. Like, they're okay to them, but just always the presence of the servants there, like entering rooms or moving screens, or
It's almost like they're not there.
yeah,
Like, they're there, but they're not there.
right.
And I know she like threw in the nudity scenes for that depiction. So
Oh,
that
you mean
could
the
see,
getting dressed?
yeah, the getting
Yeah.
dressed scenes. They didn't really work for me, but I understand why she put them in. And I see what she was trying to do with I think that it was brilliantly done, because it was never a forefront. She was still making a point. But I just felt like those scenes kind of took it over the top for me.
I like the scenes of getting dressed and spending time with them just dancing. Or I feel like this director really loved period drama and knew their audience and knew that we often watch these movies for that pageantry and for those scenes of like putting on the different layers, or there's so much detail in the movie, the sets, the wallpapers, the cakes they eat, it's very visual, and
Yeah.
obviously it has a budget that some of these other movies just don't have, like the Mark Strong version, some of these other TV versions. So I appreciated that because it was so indulgent to me as the viewer. And actually that scene, it's just a really brief scene of nudity, but when I watched it in the theater, I was probably the youngest person there, and the old lady behind me like gasped. I thought that was really funny. She like didn't expect it at all.
Well, because it's not been done. It's not really, not only not been done in any of the other movies, it's not really mentioned in the book. Like, there's never like the whole theme of like showing the difference in class structures was never done from a servant level.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And she
yeah.
took it to the extreme of trying to put that, like putting that in there so that you could see the class structures to the fullest extent, which I actually really liked. I just, for some reason, I feel like sometimes that when nudity is put in, it didn't work for me when I watched it, but when I went back and looked at it from a different perspective, I liked it more. Does that make sense? Like, because it's not done in a sexual way, and I think that was, I think I had the same reaction as the lady behind you. It was kind of like, why? Like, why is that in there? Why is it necessary? And then when I like went back to like look, to kind of read about it and look about it and saw some of the other people's opinions on why it was in there, I was like, okay, it makes more sense, but it's still, I didn't know if it worked for me.
Mm-hmm. No, that's totally fair, because it's, like you said, definitely something new. I think it also added to sexual tension. Jane Austen is not an author who, it's not like Jane Eyre. It's not like there's these sweeping, like romantic things. It's very subdued and it's all in the emotions. And the other version of a Jane Austen movie that does sexual tension really well is the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice.
They did a great job.
Just by their proximity and
Yeah.
the shots on the hands. And I thought this movie did such a great job with that and really continued that tradition of nobody's like making out or anything, in like a really ridiculous way. There's no sex scenes.
The tension between the two leading characters in this movie is phenomenal.
Even between Harriet and Mr. Robert Martin.
Yes,
Agreed. Yeah.
I think they did a nice job of like having the tension. I just don't know if the nudity scenes added anything to me.
Got it.
Does that make sense? It was like it wasn't a sexualized scene. It was actually slightly enduring in her character, especially when she like lifted up the skirt to like warm her bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But it just didn't work for me. It just felt like it was added in there as an artistic point, but it didn't work.
Right.
Like it didn't need it or didn't add anything to the movie for me.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense?
Yeah, I think to me just added that these were like real life people and they had she was more conscious of their bodies, I feel like, than maybe other versions have been. And then to me that really worked well and in harmony with the scenes of them dancing or their hands touching, or it created a more like sizzling atmosphere by just adding these really unsexualized scenes of nudity in it.
Yeah.
But if it didn't work for you, that's totally valid.
It didn't work for me. It just seemed it actually the main reason that you like the scenes, like the show of like I like period piece dramas as much as you do, but you like them for sometimes I sometimes I get the vibe that you like them for the aristocratic, like all the dressing and stuff, and I don't, you know what I'm saying, and that doesn't appeal to me when I watch them as much as it does you. It's me. I just like I think the stories back then are more original, and I like the interactions and how the emotion doesn't have to be right up in your face.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, so to me, that scene, I didn't need it.
Do you think then the set dressing and the costumes and all that were too over the top at times, or do you think it always matched I
think it matched the character display very well, actually. They weren't as fitting to the movie, to the original set, like the original like timeline, but they were beautifully done.
I actually thought the same thing, and then I tried to do a bunch of research on it and watched videos on it because I thought the skirts were so short, like because they show their ankles most of the time, and I thought that was pretty shocking. And then I found out that in 1815 there was a really short period of time when women wore these really short dresses, even in evening wear, even in like they would wear shorter dresses usually in Regency times for things like dancing and like a walking dress. And also people of the lower classes would, of course, wear shorter dresses because they're, doing manual labor. But yeah, so that was actually pretty accurate, even though I vehemently thought it was not. And a lot of the patterns, like Emma has this pink jacket that has all these patterns on it and all this embroidery on it. That's an exact replica of like a picture they found of the time. And a lot of the patterns are actually just... And that is so rare to have the money to make all these extravagant costumes and the different fabrics they wore. You could really tell who was poor and who was rich just by the textures.
Well, not just the textures, but the color usage. And that was something that I liked in the set better than on other movies, is that they used color to show the different classes. And I thought that was very well done. It was the set and the costumes were beautiful. I think they added to the script for sure.
Also, there's a little detail of, just wanted to point this out about the costumes, where Emma wears a pearl necklace, which would have been such a precious thing at the time, and the pearls are not perfectly round. And that's something that always bothers me, and I'll always point it out, that we are now so used to growing pearls, and they're always perfectly round, they're these perfect shapes, and that wouldn't have been something that was a requirement or even something that was wanted at the time. So the way they were presented, it seemed more organic. Yeah, and I mean, so many costumes you see over and over again because they just rent them out for every BBC drama. So it's just really special to see something that has this budget again, like I said before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that yellow coat that Emma wears.
yeah,
It's
so-
classic.
yeah.
That's why it's in all the posters, and also just the commodity of light, where everything in her mansion is like so big and bright. Same with Mr. Knightley, but then you go over to like Mrs. Bates' house, and everything's really dark
and drabby.
Yeah, and the piano takes up the whole room because it's such a douchey present, and they don't have room for a piano, because the house is so small. So I thought visually it really worked for me, and walking out of the theater too, everybody else was like, everything was like a perfect photograph, like every shot was thought through, and even the choreography of people moving around, you could tell that everything was intentional. And I know that you said that sometimes felt a little too overacted for you.
I feel like in the very beginning, like I said, the opening scene was my toughest part in the movie. As it developed, it didn't bother me as much, but for some reason there was a rhythm to the speech that I didn't like in the very beginning. It was
And also
almost
they're
like
walking too.
Yeah,
Every
it was just
step.
everything was done in like a rhythm to this song that was in, and I think it was well done in the sense of like it was very visually appealing, but for me it just something about the rhythm didn't
feel natural.
It didn't feel natural. It just felt like kind of contrived. But I mean, I think that was the purpose of it. I feel like if I watch it a second time, I'm going to like it more. Like every time I watch it, I feel like I'm going to get more respect. I'm going to notice more things. The first time I watched it, I was so fanatical about the Emma that was done with Gwyneth Paltrow that like I tended to go back and forth, and I liked that one so much. It was like, oh, I don't like her because she's not like that.
Right.
But then when I went back and I read the book and I like looked over things, I was like, okay, maybe I should rewatch this movie, which I still want to do. So what's your take on the father?
So we talked about the dad not being as valetudinarian as he's really supposed to be. He's a little too spry. He jumps around a little too much.
I think that I liked his character. When I was watching it, he was definitely a comic relief throughout the entire thing. Looking at his portrayal from what the book is, it doesn't match at all.
Yeah.
Because like he's not supposed to be feeling well all the time, right? He's supposed to be constantly worried about draft. And yet in the opening scene, the first time you see him, he's jumping over the ledge of the staircase in the background.
Yeah.
And that's the actor is like known for that kind of spryness in his roles. Like almost everything I've ever seen him in, he's always kind of like that character. So I feel like the very beginning when he jumps over the thing, I'm like, that doesn't fit in with what he would do. He would be so upset if he saw someone else do that. Like so upset that it would like they would hurt themselves, or I mean there's like a constant lovability to his character. But there's always a constant worry to his character. Like he's always constantly worrying about other people's health, about whether they're supposed to eat the cake. And he even shows that in the movie. So he like buys into that aspect, but then he's jumping over the banister.
Yeah, he like jumps down the steps.
Yeah, like it doesn't really
I think I've just seen the dad so many times with the blanket and the nightcap. He's always wearing the hat, and that I actually really liked him immediately jumping up and being like, oh, is there a draft? I didn't mind that they changed that.
No, like I said, I didn't mind. I actually, like I said, his character is a comic relief through the entire movie. I think it brings in such a nice warmth to his character that was never really there before. I just don't like that one scene.
Yeah, you had trouble with the beginning.
I really did. I feel like they just, I feel like they weren't settled in their characters yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but like I feel like it was kind of cold in the beginning a little for me. Like as it got, not for all of them, like Mr. Knightley from start to finish to me worked. There wasn't like a point where his character didn't work for me. I liked what they did with his character in terms of like still having the age gap there, but making his looks a little bit more viable and like his character a little bit more innocent so that they work together. So there's more of a balance.
Yeah, I don't think there was that big of an age gap in this one. I think that was a conscious choice where how I don't know, from what I read
there is a huge difference in their age, like in reality.
Okay.
So like I think there's like a 12-year age gap, but because he looks so young,
and they
they thought it would work better and people would be more accepting of his
'cause
character.
I noticed that he doesn't have those lines that's like, oh, I held you when you were a baby. All those lines in the book and in other versions.
Well, they definitely made a distinct choice. I mean, no, it was very classic and known back then for there to be such an age gap. They wanted to make it more relative to the time. And I definitely liked how they took the masculinity down by like showing his weaknesses a lot in this movie, like showing him tearing up at the wedding scene, even to his like crying despair when he like they made
when
him
he's
more
laying in his house.
Yeah,
that scene is so funny.
It's amazing. And that's why his character worked for me so well, because they actually did modernize his character a little bit.
Did you like that scene they added of him realizing that he's in love with her and running to her house?
I definitely think it fit in with the movie.
I really liked that scene. What I didn't like is then it descending into complete like ridiculous chaos when Harriet gets carried in.
That was the part. It was really good,
like,
and I like felt like it needed something more there. And then she like got carried in, and she was being ridiculous, and I don't know. It was like such a powerful scene, and then it kind of got like smashed.
Yeah. I think to me there's so many humor misfires in this movie because you can't have every character be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you have these great scenes of friendship between Emma and Harriet, but then why make Harriet always be in the background with her eyes popping out and like she's just so ridiculously portrayed in this. And
yeah, she's my least likable character in this. Not just that, but like how they portrayed her, like accepting, like blaming Emma for like the Mr. Martin. Like there was that scene where she's like, you made me tell him no, or like.
Really? When was that?
I don't remember. It was like they were talking about her liking them both liking Mr. Knightley. And it was
I
like
like that
scene.
because she's kind of standing up for herself, which is not something we ever really got.
I know, but I just never really got that would have been her character, like how her character would have reacted.
Because she's very meek and like very.
And to me, it's like you can't just all of a sudden throw in a backbone to a character that doesn't have a backbone.
It's a character journey.
But there was no development.
It was just too sudden.
Yeah. It was like there wasn't like a moment where she's like starting to speak up for her. You know what I'm saying? Like I never really saw it, and then all of a sudden it was just like this spiteful moment, and it was just like, I don't know if that works for me. If they were gonna do it, I feel like they should have done it like in little pieces.
I gotcha.
It shouldn't just be like a burst of, you know what, now I have my I don't know, it just didn't work for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think Harriet, the vicar is absolutely ridiculous and too over the top. And then you also have the dad being a humorous character. And I think that really also detracts from, I mean, they got Miranda, what's her name? Miranda Hart to be in this movie and be so funny as Miss Bates. But then I feel like she's so overpowered and not allowed to shine because I'm like, well, I have all these other ridiculous characters that are constantly being over the top. So you're just another one in the line.
Yeah. I feel like her character didn't, Mrs. Bates' character worked amazing. Miss Bates, sorry. But I feel like Jane Fairfax didn't work for me at all either.
I like this Jane Fairfax.
Do you?
Later on, not in the beginning, but
I just hated the duel scene, like the singing scene.
Which scene?
The scene, the piano scene.
Where she owns Emma and playing the piano?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with her owning Emma. I just felt like there was a smugness or a just kind of an overconfidence that wasn't really there in the book for me or wasn't really there in any of the other movies, and I don't know if I like it. Like, Miss Fairfax was supposed to be like this overwhelmingly nice person and just kind of like genteel, and then all of a sudden she's just like this. She's always supposed to be a better piano player and a better singer, but I like the fact that she duetted. I'm talking over myself, but I like the fact that she duetted with Mr. Knightley. I think that was important.
You like that scene?
I do like that scene. I just feel like her attitude in it was wrong. Like there was a smugness or like a conceit in her in this role.
I guess I didn't see that. I just
that
saw
I didn't
her
like.
I saw her as really reserved, and there's other versions who have, like Emma Approved, who've done that, where she comes off almost kind of mean, but she's really just being really silent and not sharing anything.
Yeah, and that was fine for me. It was just there was a it was like when no one was looking, if you looked at her face, there was like an evil smile there, and it was not something that
There was no evil smile.
there was for me. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't like her, and but there was just this evilness to her character in this that I didn't like.
Jane Fairfax to me is one of Austen's most tragic characters. There's no happy end for her.
Yeah.
She has all these accomplishments, and she's better at Emma, but still she's poor, and she almost has to be a governess, and she's just relying on Frank to get his act together. I mean, there's that line that Mr. Knightley has at the end that puts it perfectly, and I think it's very much the author passing judgment, where he's like, he makes so many mistakes and everybody's so happy to forgive him.
Yeah.
And he feels really bad for Jane Fairfax.
There was actually one scene in this movie that I thought that I really, really liked that they hadn't put in any of the other ones, or I don't even think it was in the book. It was the mention of why he missed his father's wedding. It showed a dislike for his character that should be there. Does that make sense?
Well, it's because his aunt needed him, right?
No, in the movie, they talk about it was like the first scene that he met Jane. That's why that's why he told his father that his aunt needed him, but he was actually like out on town.
Oh, I
with
forgot
friends.
about that.
Yeah. So I liked that they did that.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, so for example, the Mark Strong version has a scene at the end where they're just so in love and they're finally together. I don't like that. I don't think this is a good marriage. It's not a marriage of equals. Jane Fairfax isn't.
No,
this
he
isn't
was
a happy
flirting
end.
with Emma the entire movie right in front of Jane Fairfax. Like, there's no way that I could like this character, and I liked that they made him a little bit more villainous. In the other Emma version with Gwyneth Paltrow, they put in, what was his name?
Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor, and you like him throughout the entire movie.
Yeah,
like
it's
so
Ewan
much. Because it's Ewan McGregor, and he's just a likable character.
Yeah.
And I liked him in that movie, and it wasn't a problem. But when you look back at like how he should be portrayed, and like what an ass he is to like Jane Fairfax to sit there and be flirting and like be like playing around with her emotions so much, it's like you just want to smack him, but you don't want to smack him in that movie. I liked him better in this one.
They also didn't have that scene of when the governess, what's her name, Mrs. Weston, when she says to Emma, like, oh, I think Mr. Knightley sent that piano. And Emma's like, oh, really? But then Mr. Knightley walks up to Emma and is like, what a douchey present. It's pretty much like the horse from Sense and Sensibility that Willoughby gives to Marianne.
Yes.
It's just like such a stupid present.
Yeah.
And then Emma realizes, oh, it couldn't have been Mr. Knightley because
Yeah, he's not that.
Yeah, he has tact, and that's never discussed in this movie, that what a stupid present it is. There's no line about that, and they don't lean into it being a love story, but they also don't spend a lot of time on Frank in this movie, which is a choice. I mean, you only have so much time to really put in a movie, so poor Jane.
Agreed.
Oh, how did you like the proposal scene with the nosebleed? People are so split on that.
I'm still split on it. And I watched and read like several things about it. And I understand why it was in there. I definitely think I don't think it came across to me as funny as it was supposed to. Because I think it was done in there as a comic relief and kind of like to show a lack of romance, but at the same time, like a practicality to like, I don't know if I liked it.
So I liked the tension and pressure in that scene. And I actually looked up that the director added sound of bees in there to make it even more tense. Which I have to rewatch and look out for that. I'm sure my subconscious brain heard that and I just don't remember. But it's just all that pressure and like final release of her nose starting to bleed. Like, I liked it. I was like, I've never seen this before and I don't need... This book has been made into a movie 20 times already. I'm cool with it being like something different and him like fist pumping the air.
That I liked. Yeah. That reaction was classic. She's so vain throughout the entire movie to sit there and have blood being on her face, like in front of someone. Like I think that was the part that didn't work for me. I just like didn't see her reaction as.
But she doesn't care anymore because she's in love, Stacey. They're finally together.
Yeah, no.
I liked it. I really liked it. I
definitely think it was new and original, and I liked how they didn't jump into like them like kissing or anything like that. I think their first kiss scene was perfect. I loved that the father was like putting up screens.
Yeah, the screen team.
Oh my god, it was so amazing.
And then it just cuts out to the servants being like, "What? I hate my job."
It was such a great scene. I think it worked in the movie. I just don't know if I buy that she was just sitting there with blood on her lip. Like I think it would have worked if she like was better about like wiping it off. Like, I don't know. I know that sounds weird, but it's just her vanity didn't work for me in that. I like I said, I have more of issue with her than I do any of the other characters.
Interesting.
So I think that may be why I was so critical of everything. I think maybe if I rewatched it, that I might have a different viewpoint.
That scene, especially in the Gwyneth Paltrow version, it's one of the only scenes where Jane Austen actually writes out the dialogue. Because she'll just write like, oh, and Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy went on a walk and they talked and they're together now. You know, there's not a lot of dialogue in these final scenes. And there's that really famous line where he says, if I loved you less, I may be able to talk about it more, which is, I love that it was in this version. I also thought it was really interesting that it wasn't in the Jeremy Northam version, which is such a great scene between Gwyneth Paltrow and him. And the dialogue they write for that is completely new and original, where he's like, oh, my dear friend Emma. And like, it's such a wonderful, beautiful scene. And I think that's just another example of not sticking with the book at all. You're the director, you can do your own thing and you can make it work for your movie. So they both work for me. I also really like the dance lesson scene between Harriet Smith and Emma, where they're like having a sleepover.
Oh yeah, I thought that was really cute.
Even in the actual dance later on, Harriet is less skilled at it than Emma. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was nice that these actors weren't getting the same amount of direction or training. And like, well, Emma obviously has to be better at this than Harriet. And there were so many sweet scenes like that I just wish a lot of the times that Harriet wasn't treated like such a joke. Like, I feel
like that they did such a better job in this one and than I have seen in the past of their relationship. Like you actually see a relationship and a friendship there and a mutual respect that I don't always see in the other ones. Like it always seems contrived, like they're friends because she pities her. Mm-hmm. And in this one I see that maybe it started off like that, but then there becomes more of an actual friendship. Their chemistry together as friends worked really well. What do you think about the cake scene?
Oh, the sand cake thing?
Yeah, like what was that?
Did we look up if that was a real thing?
Oh no, I forgot to look it up, but that whole scene, I just don't know why it was in there.
I think it was just to show it was necessary. It was just to show that this is how these schoolgirls clown around. And even though Emma's kind of the same age, she's like too refined and too pish-posh to like participate in any of that. I don't know
because, I mean, how old are the schoolgirls? Because
I think Harriet's like 18 and Emma's supposed to be like 21.
She's supposed to be 21. So I don't know if she would have, maybe it would have been different if she was younger.
Yeah.
Maybe that was something to show the age. I just don't know why it was necessary.
It's a weird one.
It just was like thrown in there. It didn't really add or take away from the plot. It was like, it was cute. You know, it was like a cute scene. I just don't know if it added anything. I watched that and I was like, what is this? Like, why are we watching this? I don't know. It just was such a weird throw in, like, random
I don't know what else
scene.
to say to that. Yeah. I do also really like the line that Emma has about if Harriet does marry Robert Martin, which she is against and tries to prevent, their status would be such that she could no longer interact with Harriet. Yeah. When she says like, oh, I just want Harriet for myself. You know, and she's very selfish. She's not thinking of what's best for Harriet but it's another one of these cool little class things in there.
I like that. And I definitely liked how, so in the book, you really feel the loss that she feels from losing her best friend and her...
Oh, the governess?
The
Mrs.
governess,
Weston,
yeah. So, like, you know, that's like her mother, but also like her best friend.
Yeah.
And
Miss
she
Taylor.
loses her and she doesn't have her like right there, like every second. And I feel like in a lot of the movies, they don't really touch on that relationship or like that loss that Emma feels. And in this movie, they do a really good job of like showing that and then showing why she wants to have a friend. Like, does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
it's
just
like
the sense of isolation.
Yeah.
Where Emma is like, oh yeah, she's the best piano player in her community of like 30 people.
Yeah.
Like, but she's not allowed to leave. She's not going to Box Hill is like a huge deal for her because she's never gone anywhere.
Yeah. So I thought it was really well done. Mm-hmm. Like that aspect of it, because it's lacking in other adaptations. And in this one, it was like explained why she wants a friend and like why she wants, it explained her character a little bit more. If that makes sense? So.
Definitely. I also really loved the family dynamics between the Woodhouses. Oh yeah. In the book, the brother-in-law, Mr. Knightley's brother, is super douchey and like
Yeah.
treats the sister like trash.
Yeah.
And they almost reverse that in this version, where he's just putting up with her. You know, she's constantly worried about her health, just like the dad.
Yeah.
And then when they leave, the dad's crying, and you have that scene of Emma trying to comfort him, and the relationship between Emma and her dad, but then also between the dad and the sister. And then I really loved at the end of the wedding when the brother-in-law is like crying at the wedding. He's like a big softie after all. Like,
Well, that's the funny part, because I feel like in the book they always say like how fond Mr. Knightley is of Emma, like not Mr. Knightley, but the brother.
Oh, is he the older brother?
He's the younger brother.
He's the younger brother.
So they always say that they have like a close bond, but then you like never really see it in any of the other movies, at least for me. And then in here, it's like you have this duality of nature where he's always like constantly in a bad mood because of the sister, and then at the same time like you still want to feel that he has a warmth toward the family. And I think they did a nice job of like playing into that, and especially with that scene where they like have him like, you're like, oh okay, there's that we're missing.
Yeah, and also what I've never seen done, which maybe I'm just misremembering, but that scene of the mix-up with the carriages where Emma gets left behind at the Christmas party because everybody took like the wrong carriage. It's in the book, and then the brother-in-law feels really bad about having left Emma behind once they finally get home. And she ends up with the vicar in the carriage, and you have that scene of him. Yeah, what did you think of him like bursting out and then like leaving?
Well, I actually really liked his portrayal in this, except for that scene. He was a good comic relief. He brought like an aspect of that character to life to me that I felt was missing in other things, because in the version with Gwyneth, like the character's so...
I like him. I don't know. I love that
like,
actor. Yeah.
I like that actor, but I just like never, I was like, he's not handsome. There's not like there's not an ass, you know what I'm saying? Like he's not, I never understood why he was even a prize in that movie.
Right.
But this one, it's like you have this really good looking guy. Now, how are you going to make him ridiculous? And he did a good job of like playing down his looks and coming across like a complete doofus.
Yeah.
And a vanity, like even in his script, you know, like even in his sermons, like God is telling him to do this.
Right.
I don't know. There was definitely a brilliance to his portrayal in terms of like being able to play ridiculous, but still being able to like be seen by some as, you know, she's a witty character. So you have to believe that there's something in him that she can see that maybe she misses later. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I liked him bursting out, like underneath all that veneer of like, he's so pompous. He just throws his fit and like leaves the carriage.
I just think that there was like a hostility to it that I don't know if I would have seen. I don't know. It seemed much more dramatic than it needed to. I feel like it could have been toned down just a little bit based on his reactions to everything else.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I thought it was weird that he just got out of the carriage in a snowstorm. I mean,
well, it wasn't really a snowstorm. The dad was kind of exaggerating, but which I feel so bad for the Westons when they all get up and leave because it starts snowing and they're like haven't even started dinner yet.
Yeah,
like,
it was a very... It was definitely a scene cut short. Do you like that they left out the whole scene with the letter, like the poem that they're supposed to write? Yeah.
Yeah, I was good without it.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was missing.
Because it would have made Harriet look even more ridiculous. Like she can't figure out the courtship riddle and...
Yeah, I thought it was actually perfectly done that it didn't go in there.
Did you like the vicar's wife?
I love her as an actress because I've seen her in other roles. She's on a Netflix show called Sex Education, and she plays the like ridiculous, very confused and very into like sci-fi character where she's is so wanting to have sex, but then is like obsessed with alien sex and like all kinds. It's the most over the top character you could ever see, and she's so brilliant in it that I think she did a really good job of like playing.
I thought she was great.
I think she's amazing. Yeah. And so far, everything I've seen her in, she's amazing. So I think that I might have been tainted in her performance just because I like her so much as an actress. But she didn't let me down.
I also love that her outfits were not of the time and maybe not accurate. And those hairstyles wouldn't be popular until, like 20 years later. Yeah. But that she tries to be so fashionable and tries to be like so haute couture when she just kind of looks a little ridiculous. And again, that scene in the church that they came up with for this movie that shows the class relations where Emma and her dad obviously sit in the front, but she's now sitting there because now she's the wife and she takes the front pew. So then the Coles move over and they don't want to sit with the Coles because they're like not on the same class level. So they sit one rung behind her. Just so many things going on in that one scene
No, I liked it, definitely.
That was a cool scene.
It was a very cool scene. It also just showed like a power move.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was definitely a power move by her character, which she's kind of known to do throughout the book as well. So it really worked for me.
When she tries to like take over Mr. Knightley's house,
Oh my God,
like,
that was amazing.
Party. God, and she like calls him Knightley, and she doesn't even know him.
Yeah.
Like even when she did that in this movie, it's one of those things where you're always shocked at it. Like, how dare she do that?
But she did it in such a way where you're like, oh, yeah.
She's just
You don't hate her in
she's
this
so
movie,
gutsy,
but
yeah.
she's so gutsy and like just obstinate that you're like, but she does it so well. I don't know. She really works for me. I definitely think the acting in this movie was phenomenal. Like one of my favorites in terms of.
Yeah, besides the things that were too over the top for me,
But I think that was like a directing aspect.
Yeah, I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
I know that it was intentional, and you could tell that it was just those few scenes, like the scene of Harriet being attacked by the gypsies, and where I was like, okay, let's tone it down a little bit. Just show me some like witty dialogue instead of making things ridiculous. It's just not the kind of humor that I'm into.
Yeah.
Something I really loved were Emma's drawings, and we've talked about this before many times. When you show people being good at a skill and it's like way better than they're really supposed to be.
Yeah.
But like her watercolors are like just okay, but like she thinks she's good at it because she hasn't seen anything else. They weren't like these amazing paintings, and like when they showed her drawings, I just broke out laughing because I was like, yeah, that's perfect. That's
it worked really well.
Prop
for
this movie.
Do you think it would be appropriate for her to go to Mr. Martin and...
No, but I liked it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't think that's something that would happen in real life, but I like that scene. I appreciated it. Of her, especially in that scene of the proposal of Mr. Knightley being like, oh, obviously I'm going to be the one to talk to Mr. Martin. Like, they haven't even been introduced, and Emma is very against decorum to just walk up and give him that present and talk to him, and I like that. It was like a character growth moment.
Yeah, I definitely like the character growth moment. I don't know. They've done several things in this movie where it's not like against decorum of the times. So I definitely think it worked for this movie. It was definitely an interesting insert. Also, how do you like Mr. Martin?
I liked him. I think a lot of versions really don't show him much. And I appreciate them spending a little bit more time with him, and also the sisters having that scene in the shop where they walk in and it's kind of awkward, and I think it's too easy to just follow whatever Emma tells you, especially in the book, and be like, oh, he's not suitable. Like, oh, because he hasn't read this one book or whatever it is. But in this one, you could almost really see Mr. Knightley's view of like, he's her better. Like we don't know what family she's from, or...
I liked how they humanized the character a little bit.
Yes,
they actually made him more prominent, and he wasn't just some backdrop, which I think really adds to the storyline, especially since it kind of adds to Mr. Knightley's character, and like it worked really well for me. I thought I would give a little shout out to him because I thought he did a good job.
And I think also that scene of Mr. Knightley coming around and saying to Emma, you know, Harriet has some qualities that the vicar's wife lacks, and you chose better for him than he chose for himself, I think is such a lovely scene. That whole scene I thought is so well done. I have not seen it done badly in any adaptation where Mr. Knightley dances with Harriet. I think it's so sweet every time. And the dance scene again in this between Emma and Mr. Knightley was just to create sexual tension. I thought it did a really good job of that, of showing, you know, their hands touching in the slow movements and just being there with them and just watching their dancing. So
yeah, no, it was really beautifully done, and it really did capture like why you think that they should be together, because there's an intensity that was there and a innocence on both characters that it isn't always there in all the other movies.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people make the case that Mr. Knightley is the best Austen hero, even though maybe he's not my personal favorite, but he's independent, he has sound judgment, he's strong-willed, mature. You know, at the end, he gives all that up to be like, no, I'm going to live with you in this house to take care of your dad. So he's he's definitely one of the stronger heroes. Not that there's really a bad one.
Yeah.
But really well done in this.
Yeah. What do you think of how rude, like in the Box Hill scene, how rude she is?
That worked for both of us, right?
Yeah, it worked really well for me.
Struck in the heart.
I was like so struck by it because in other adaptations I haven't seen, like it wasn't as offensive to me. Like it was done so like moderately that I was like, in this one it was just like.
And you felt it coming. And
yeah, it was just like
when she finally says it, like, "Oh, it's the trouble of you saying only 3 stupid things," and you're like, "Oh." You're just so awkward.
The facial expressions of everyone, and just I actually really liked how they portrayed Mrs. Elton in that scene too.
Oh, but she's so pompous again too. Like, what do you mean you want to know what I'm thinking? Yeah. How dare you? I'm like, oh, just shut up. She's so great, but also like,
we're not supposed to fully like her character.
I know.
So I think it was such a
just like
nice
walking with the parasol with her husband. I'm like, oh god, they're so insufferable. Oh, I really like the last shot, which is in the wedding scene. But it's not of the church, it's not of the couple, it's just of Emma's face, and then she's closing her eyes. Mm-hmm. And so we start with Emma, we end with Emma, and even though there's all these other colorful characters that are all really important, the book is called Emma, and this is her story.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I usually will notice, like, what is the last shot a director will end their movie with? And this was the perfect one.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely like the ending better than almost any adaptation I've seen so far.
Yeah, and I think the music too. That gorgeous theme that they came up with, that's like the Italian singing, and then you have some environmental sounds in there, like there's a sound of the clock winding. I think who made the music is called Isabel Waller-Bridge. Mm-hmm. It's the sister of Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's the composer. Did you like the music, or was it too
I thought the music was brilliant. No,
like...
I liked the music. I told you the opening scene was the only real scene where like the music played in, and I don't know if it worked for me. I feel like I really should rewatch it. I tried to rewatch it and find a clip on it, but there's no clip on the opening scene.
Yeah, it's not coming out until May 5th, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
On Blu-ray.
Yeah, I mean, they had a bunch of other of the scenes, but that one was just, I couldn't find it anywhere. And I really wanted to rewatch it because my first reaction was so negative toward it.
I just liked it because it's like, oh, of course, them cutting flowers is like a servant would be doing that. Yeah. And they're choosing the flowers, and not to romanticize that servant-master relationship and just to show what it was back in the day. I had never really seen that before.
No, I mean, they definitely brought that class structure into this so well, and it was layered so peacefully within all of it, where like there's points where it goes, you don't even notice it's there unless you're paying attention to it. I feel like in some of the adaptations you only get like the top, the top cast. Yeah. You're not really seeing the bottom. I think the only time that they try and like put that in is like the gypsy scene, which you don't even get in this movie.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
But I feel like the scenes that they've added in are much more elegant and show that drasticness like a lot more efficiently. Mm-hmm.
The only other last thing I had to say about it was, and we'll post this on Instagram for everyone to see, but there was a illustration done for the soundtrack by Carson Ellis, and it's a very modern, like this whimsical art style, and it's a picture of Emma, and then it's a picture of Mr. Knightley like laying on the floor with his, in that scene where he's just like despairing. And it was commissioned by the director, and I guess she's friends with the illustrator. And people may not realize this, but having actual art for your movies is pretty rare. Photography has taken over, and I think that age of like having these gorgeous movie posters like in your room that are these fantastic illustrations is pretty much over, because we just don't have that anymore. I think the only other director who I've seen that do is Guillermo del Toro, who commissioned these art pieces for his movies. And I just really appreciated that even though she probably couldn't do it for the main poster, she used extra artwork for the soundtrack and supported artists in helping create her movie. So we'll post a picture of that in a link so you guys can look at it. Yeah. And that's pretty much all I had on it. It's definitely one where you have so much baggage to it too. This isn't the first Emma we've seen. Oh, so you definitely need to like rewatch it again. And
yeah, I definitely think that it's something that I would like to rewatch and then see if my opinion changes on certain scenes, because I think I think that you do that with any Jane Austen or
definitely. Yeah.
You have all these like already preconceived notions of what the characters should be and how they should be displayed, and like to see somebody take it and still put a new twist on it after so many renditions, like it's very well done. It's very funny. The wit in it isn't there's some that didn't work. It was a little over the top, but most of the characters did a really good job, and the acting in it is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's really well put, Stacey.
Thank you.
And I honestly appreciate, even if something doesn't work, I appreciate somebody trying something new. Same with, we talked about Little Women, you know, we've seen it a million times before. You really have to dare something new and go at some of these classics from a new angle. I mean, there's that new Charles Dickens movie coming out.
Yeah, I heard about that. I'm like excited to see it.
Where it's like the director was like, well, we use colorblind and genderblind casting for theatrical things where Hamlet will be played like by a woman or something like that. And he's like, why don't I just do that for this movie? So he has all these people of color playing all these different roles. And I was like, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And like, we'll check it out.
Well, you definitely got to reinvent things. Otherwise you're just telling the same story over and over again. Yeah. And I think that she did a really nice job in this of like bringing in new themes that maybe didn't play as big a role in other adaptations, and so it didn't take away from the main story point, but it's still,
that's true, yeah,
you know, was still there, and she brought a new light to him, which I thought was really brilliant. So I give full credit to that.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, you can find us at Modern Life Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Email us at modernlifepod@gmail.com, and also visit our website, modernlifepodcast.com. Bye.
Bye.
Dearly beloved friends, we gather here in the sight of God to join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony. An honorable estate instituted by God in the time of man's great innocence.